calculator. So the very first, you know, as we began having conversations with fleets, both commercial fleets and municipal fleets, the one thing that we understood was that all fleet conversion scenarios are different. And as such, they should each be treated on a case-by-case basis. They're all going to have their own inputs that reflect their real-world operating conditions. And so we strove to create a calculator that enables fleet managers, fleet staff to make inputs that reflect their operating conditions. The first button here is you can either check Oregon. Right now, Oregon is checked. Alternatively, you can check other states. If you check Oregon, two things happen behind the scenes. First, the carbon intensity baseline, the CI baseline, becomes 90.48, which is the blended CI average for Oregon's Clean Fuels program at present from 2020 to 2035, or a typical 15-year vehicle life. The second thing that'll happen is there's a cell behind the scenes that will get populated with a dollar value for those Oregon Clean Fuel Program credits, or CFP credits. At present, they're worth about $115 per metric ton, down from $150 to $160 per ton pre-COVID times. So, you know, when you check that button, you have the 90.48 CI, you've got the value for the CFP credits. When you don't check the button, which we will do in the subsequent fleet conversion scenario, then you have a baseline CI score of 101.1, the traditional CI score for fossil diesel, and you have no value for any CFP credits. So we'll leave that button checked. So we're going to say that this is going to be a transit fleet. Transit fleets can have varying miles per gallon, anywhere from 3 to 5 miles per gallon. We're going to use 4.1. That would be for a, you know, your urban fleets will be at 3, your very rural fleets will be at 5. We're going to use 4.1. Most transit fleets that I've spoken with keep their buses for 500,000 miles and anywhere from 12 to 18 years. So we're going to type in 500,000. It's already typed in there, but that's only as a suggestion. When you use the tool, you'll see that, and I can't see this, most of you know I'm blind, but those letters are now in a dimmer shade. So 15 years for the vehicle useful life. So a typical diesel bus, depending on whistles and bells, cameras, ADA, and so forth, is around 600,000 for a 40-foot bus. We've incorporated a residual value as well. We'll make that 100,000 resale value at the end of its useful life. Now, behind the scenes, what's happening is CNG, RNG powered buses are going to become 15% more expensive than the diesel model, and battery electrics will become 50% more expensive. We recognize that those numbers aren't accurate under every scenario, but as a rule, it's about as close as we could get, adding 15% for the CNG and 50% for the BEVs. So here we have an option for including grant funding, any kind of grant funding, state, local, federal. Typically for diesel-powered transit fleets, you're looking at about 75% grant funding. You can get as much as 80%, but most folks who handle grants and grant applications with transit agencies tell me that they shoot for 75%, because if they shoot for 80%, their application may not be as competitive. So we'll put in 75%. And that means that 75% of the cost of the vehicle will be covered through a grant, and 25% will be covered by the transit agency. It does not mean, however, that any of the cost of the fueling and maintenance infrastructure that's required, either for CNG fueling and maintenance or for BEV charging and maintenance, none of that is included in this grant. And I could talk a bit more about the assumptions that we made behind the scenes to account for that that fueling and maintenance infrastructure. So we'll put in 75%. And you could change these numbers for diesel, for CNG, RNG, and for BEV. You know, it's entirely possible that in a BEV scenario, you get 100% grant funding. And this calculator allows you to do that and see what the financial results are. They're quite good, as you'd expect. But to compare apples to apples for purposes of this webinar, we'll just make them all 75%. So this is the place where you can decide whether you have faith that the alternative fuel tax credit program will continue throughout the duration of the fleet conversion, say the useful lifetime of the vehicles that are being converted, or whether you don't have any faith that Congress will continue to support the AFTC program. We're going to be glass half full people for this. So we're going to check that, make sure it's checked. Checkbox checked. So I've seen all different costs per therm. You know, I've seen as low as 27 cents per therm up to 60 cents per therm. Now, this assumes, though, that the transit agency in this case is building, owning, and operating its own fueling infrastructure. If you go to a third-party fueling scenario, for example, with one of our alliance members like US Gain or Trillium, you'll see a much higher price on the one hand, but on the other hand, so what we're talking about, Michael, thanks for your question. We're talking about the tax where there's 124,800 BTUs in a gasoline gallon equivalent, and there's a 50-cent tax credit that is issued for every time that you use 124,800 BTUs of fuel as an alternative fuel. And it does apply for CNG, RNG. It does not apply for battery electric. So that's what that is. Where was I? So we've seen all different prices, anywhere from 27 cents to 60 cents a therm. But again, this assumes that you're building, owning, and operating your own fueling infrastructure. If you go with a US Gain or with a Trillium, you'll be paying more for the fuel, but you won't be suffering that capital expense associated with building that infrastructure. So we're going to put that at 50 cents. So this is a read-only field here, and it really just compares for folks that are more comfortable dealing with diesel gallon equivalents. It shows you that 50 cents a therm works out to 70 cents per diesel gallon equivalent on a higher heating value basis. Here you can find more information about renewable identification numbers, or RINs, if you're not familiar with those. So this is going to be the percentage of the revenue from sale of RINs that the fleet will share when they enter into a fuel purchase agreement for purchase of renewable natural gas. And our conversations with Trillium, with US Gain, with others have indicated that 5% RIN share is realistic. I've seen it higher than that. Riverside Transit Agency, for instance, receives 10% of the revenue from sale of RINs associated with its fuel. San Diego Metro receives 12%. But we're going to be conservative and stick with 5%. Oopsie. Okay, we have 5% there. So right back here, this you can open if you so choose to find more information about Oregon Clean Fuel Program credits, what they are, you know, how they're denominated. We won't do that. We're going to put in 35%. The fleet will share in 35% of the revenue from sale of the CFP credits. Again, these are numbers that we've heard from our members, US Gain and Trillium. I've seen higher numbers. I've also seen situations where fleets don't share at all. So we're going to go with 35%. We're going to assume that electricity is coming from an investor-owned utility in the Northwest, a Portland General Electric, a Puget Sound Energy, a Pacificor, and that's going to end up with a blended price for electricity of about 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Make sure that's input. Now, I know the question will come up, so I'll preempt it. Yes, Michael, it does apply. Michael Graham from Clean Cities is asking whether the CFP credit applies to BEV as well, and yes, it does on a per BTU basis. I'm going to preempt the question. Folks that are interested in battery electric, one way or the other, are going to want to know whether this. Yeah, Michael, I'm going to ask you I appreciate the questions, but every time you ask a question, it's going in my ear, and it's kind of sidetracking me here. So people are going to ask whether the blended cost of electricity, whether that includes demand charges, things that, when you go over your allotted kilowatt bandwidth, whether those are included. They are not included because nobody really knows what they are in the Pacific Northwest. We don't have enough operating experience to really understand what those are. So this is our best guess, 10 cents per kilowatt hour using an investor-owned utility. So this maintenance cost for transit fleets, 50 cents a mile, comes from the maintenance manager at Rogue Valley Transportation District in Southern Oregon. This is about what they pay per mile to maintain their CNG powered fleet. What happens behind the scenes here is that this is the diesel cost per mile right here, the 50 cents, and that comes from Rogue Valley Transportation District. What happens behind the scenes is that the per mile cost for CNG maintenance is 80% of the diesel cost, and the BEV per mile maintenance cost is 120%, or multiplied times 1.2 against the diesel cost. And those numbers are consistent with our review of National Renewable Energy Laboratory studies of transit fleets that have used different types of fuels, whether that's CNG, RNG, diesel, battery electric. It's not a perfect multiplier, we recognize that, but it's pretty close. So we're going to stick with our 50 cents a mile for diesel and those multipliers. So given that, it's a transit fleet, so it's not paying excise tax and all that, we're going to go with 225 per gallon. Make sure that's input correctly. And now we've made all of the inputs that we have, at least on the online tool. Now, if you want to get together with me personally and run through the Excel-based tool, we can manipulate a lot more factors. For instance, we can include or remove the infrastructure cost associated with fueling and maintenance. There's a lot of factors that we can play with in the Excel tool that we cannot play with in the online tool. But we've made all the inputs that we can make. We've spent, what was Michael's second question? I don't recall. It's been a minute.
So he asks, does that CFP percentage apply to BEV credits as well? Many agencies manage those internally. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to allow 100% back to fleet for electric CFP credits? I think the quick answer, Michael, is we could probably figure that out. It'd be a little bit of a clunky approach, but you'd probably make that work. You might have to compare, do another run of the calculator at 100% just to see what that looks like. But this is designed to really kind of focus on the advantages for natural gas vehicles. So go ahead, Alex.
That's a fair answer. The answer is the answer is really yes, BEVs are included in the calculator and they do receive a percentage of the CFP credits. But yes, the percentage that they receive is identical to the percentage that that the CNG RNGs receive. It would be possible to do 100%, but it would be a bit challenging because that's not how the calculator has been set up either in Excel or as an online tool. I'm sure we could tackle it if we needed to, but we haven't tackled it yet. All right, so now we've got my email address. We've spent a lot of time, money, and effort on this project, on developing this tool. And so the only payment that we request is contact information, first name, last name, and email address. And so get your results. And we wait a moment while the machine performs its magic. And now we can go through the different fields and see what the outcomes are. So, for CNG, we've got 3.7 years. You're not capturing very many clean fuels program credits there because of the CI of natural gas and because, of course, spark-fired, spark-ignited CNG engines are 10% less efficient than diesel engines, and so that counts against you as well. For landfill gas, it's a little bit less because you've got some RINs in there and you've got a small amount of CFP credits, CI score attached to renewable natural gas from a landfill for purposes of this calculator is 45. Wastewater treatment plant, you're getting more CFP credits, so your payback period, and this payback, what we're paying back, the amount that we're paying back is the incremental cost of the CNG vehicle on a percentage basis, because remember 3/4 of that was paid for through a grant. And we're also paying 100% of the incremental cost of the fueling and maintenance infrastructure, which works out to just over $40,000 per vehicle. So with your wastewater treatment plant, you're getting more CFP credits. The CI score for RNG from a wastewater treatment plant is 15. And of course, dairy digester, you have that ridiculously low CI score of, I think it's negative 259.9 as prescribed by the California Air Resources Board. So you have a very short payback period for that incremental vehicle and infrastructure cost. Then you could see what are your savings. Oh, and there's the battery electric. So it does pay for itself within the useful 15-year life of the bus, but it takes most of that useful life to pay for itself, and so your savings are going to be less. Let's go down and see what the savings look like. So your CNG, you're going to save 185,000. There's the value of the RINs and the incremental CFP credits comes in around $40,000 when you switch to RNG from a landfill gas. And then you get a whole bunch more when it's wastewater treatment plant. And a ridiculous amount when you use RNG from a dairy digester. Now, we also recognize, and I'm going to preempt this question because I would expect it, when you sign a fuel purchase agreement for landfill gas RNG as opposed to a fuel purchase agreement for dairy digester RNG, you're probably not going to get identical percentages of the Clean Fuels Program credits because the fuel provider is going to understand that there's a whole lot more credits to be had. And so you may not be getting 35% when you do a dairy digester, you may only be getting 20%. Again, that's another shortcoming of the calculator, but it's not a perfect tool. It's just a tool that's meant to get you into the ballpark. And if preliminary answers look promising, then it gives you an opportunity to dig deeper. And you save a little bit battery electric. You don't lose any money, you save a little bit, so that's good. So your battery electric, you're saving 77%. Again, this is compared against Oregon's Clean Fuels Program 2020-2035 blended CI score. And that 77% takes into consideration how much more efficient battery electrics are, roughly 5 times more efficient on a per BTU basis than diesel-powered vehicles. It also assumes an investor-owned utility that leans pretty heavily on combined cycle gas-fired power, but also has a healthy smattering of wind, solar, and hydro in its fuel mix, and probably not much coal. Well, that's where you get your 77%. GHG reductions as opposed to as compared with the Oregon Clean Fuels Program. And those numbers will look a little bit different when Jeff runs his scenario using the fossil diesel baseline, as we would do in other states. And that's why you only get 2% GHG reductions for CNG, 45% for LFG, about 80% for wastewater treatment plant, and a ridiculous 400 and something percent for dairy digester. And so this is when you get to this point and you say to yourself, yeah, you know, it does seem as though there's a there. This is really the time when you can call me up and we can run through our Excel-based model, which offers more flexibility in terms of what can and cannot be manipulated. And if the outcome's still at promising, then we can help you do a year-on-year cost-benefit analysis. And if you're in Oregon, Washington, or Idaho, or if you're in the service territory of one of our utility members, we can perform that detailed evaluation free of charge. If you're somewhere else in the United States, we'll have to have a conversation about that. So with that, I am going to exit. And I'm going to turn my screen. I'm going to stop screen share and turn this over to Jeff so he can run through our refuse truck fleet scenario. I gotta go. There we go. Meeting controls. Screen share has been stopped. All right, Jeff, I think you're good to go.
All right, let me see if I can navigate to the right page. Let's see here. I thought I closed out everything I needed to close out. Give me a sec. I'll have to. There we go. Am I sharing it? Can you see Northwest Gas Association's website? Conversion.
Can you see that?
It's not up yet, Jeff.
Not up yet? Okay. Let me go back to Zoom and go share. I bet it's sharing now.
All right, we're up now, Jeff.
All right, excellent, excellent. I didn't panic. That was a good thing. So, Alex let me tool around with this a little bit yesterday, and it's very user friendly. I think the reason he wants me to present the second scenario is to act as a guinea pig to show just how simple this is to use. That anyone can do it, even someone who's not that familiar with it. So. Let's see what we can do here. So we're gonna pick other state. So we're gonna do something outside of Oregon, and we're doing a refuse fleet, private refuse fleet. So we have some different inputs here in terms of miles per gallon. Refuse trucks consume a lot of fuel. So the miles per diesel gallon equivalent is 2.1. And a lot of things that Alex said regarding transit buses is true for this scenario. There are things running in the background that calculate off of some of these inputs, like the fuel economy of a natural gas vehicle or battery.
Hey, Jeff, are you need to face into your mic there. I think when you turn away, we lose you. So
okay,
try to keep that there.
I'll try and speak up, but remind me if I start getting lower again. So the vehicle useful life is 100. Let's see. I thought we said thought it was 12,000 miles a year, and we put in 12 years. Alex, if you are now on mute, correct me if I have any mistakes here as I'm going along. The vehicle cost 400,000. Alex and I were talking about this yesterday. I've seen lower numbers, but I'm sure a fully loaded brand new refuse trucks can get up to $400,000. So we're going to use that. The residual value.
Hey, Jeff, this is
Sure.
Dan. you're going to need to come back up to your useful life in miles. So that's, if it's 12,000 a year times 12 years, that's 144,000 miles.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. We had 12 years and 150,000 miles for a typical useful life of a refuse truck.
150,000?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. So then working down here, grant percentage of grant funding. We're a private fleet. We're going to say that they're not getting any grant funding. In some states, there may be some grant funding available. We're going to say grant funding for the diesel vehicle, for CNG, or battery electric. We're going to run it with the alternative fuel credit first to see what the results look like, and then without the alternative fuel credit. Cost per therm. Alex, you're going to have to help me out with this one a
We're
little.
going to stick with 50 cents. It's just a good baseline number.
Okay. Okay. So for revenue of RINs, we are going to say, we're going to say 5%. RINs are in play here. That's a national program. The Renewable Fuel Standard credits are available regardless where the fuel is used. Since we're outside of Oregon, we're going to say 0 for the Clean Fuel Program credits. For electricity, we're going to use 10 cents again. That is a national average per kilowatt hour. Alex covered that before. For maintenance, we're going to use a figure that I pulled yesterday from the ICF report that they did for California. Pretty extensive report they did for NRDC and a few other groups that was issued in December of last year. And their maintenance cost per mile for refuse worked out to be $2.13. Pretty high, but these are low mileage vehicles that operate in pretty rough duty cycles. So it's quite a bit higher than the transit bus figure. The diesel cost, we're going to pulled this from the Energy Information Administration on Tuesday. We're going to use a national average for, I'm sorry, West Coast average, excluding California, is $2.57. California price is still very high. So this is the West Coast price, less California. Then I'm going to put my name in.
And you use 213 per mile for the maintenance cost?
I did use 213, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
And put in my last name. As Alex said, this is the only charge, is to provide your contact information. And I am going to just go back up real quickly and kind of scan this, make sure I've filled in everything I think I was supposed to fill in. And we've clicked other state. We've got the alternative fuel tax credit in play. We've got RINs in play. And then get results. And what we see here is, remember, we're getting no funding assistance. So the payback years and the mileage is, and the fuel consumption is lower than with transit buses. So we have a longer payback period, which can be expected. So for the CNG, it's 8.2 years. For conventional natural gas, 8.2 years to break even. And we have a 12-year life. So we've got a few years where we're going to generate some income or additional savings. Landfill gas, 7.8, 7.8 for wastewater treated, and dairy, 7.8 as well. The battery electric, because of the cost of the vehicle, and it's only getting, if it's getting a share of the RIN credit, that's not sufficient to offset its incremental cost. So it doesn't pay for itself. It actually costs more over its life than the diesel vehicle. And then the additional savings associated with natural gas you see here between $40,000 and $50,000, depending on the fuel type. So pretty good savings in terms of moving to a fuel that reduces your greenhouse gases, which is important to a lot of people. in terms of greenhouse gas benefits, you see the battery electric vehicle has a 79% reduction, but of course it's a very costly way to get your reductions. CNG, as Alex indicated, when we're outside of Washington, the greenhouse gas benefits are a little bit better compared to diesel because the diesel carbon intensity number the spreadsheet is using is a little higher than the value for Oregon diesel fuel. And then landfill gas, 51%, wastewater treated, 84%, and then dairy, 386% reduction. So by far the largest reduction and the largest savings potential with dairy. So we're going to go back. I haven't gone back before. Can I just?
I don't know if that's even possible. That was a question I was going to ask the developer, the tool developer guy.
Yeah, I was wondering, there is no back button at the top of the page, but I can, it looks like, click on no for the alternative fuel credit, and let's just see if it calculates, changes everything. I don't.
You're gonna need to redo that.
Go back to the bottom of the page and hit get results, and let's see. It's computing.
Yeah, it worked.
It did, calculate it. So the CNG, now the break-even point is a little longer. We're not getting that 50-cent credit. 12.1 years, we set the 12-year life, so it's almost break-even for CNG. Landfill gas, 11.3. The other renewable natural gas is all 11.3, and then the battery electric is still a minus 17. Not cost effective. But natural gas, you look at the natural gas, you're still moving to a lower carbon fuel, and you're almost at break even with compared to a diesel vehicle, but you're reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So you're reducing them by 12% with that conventional natural gas. With landfill gas, you're saving, or the other different natural gases, you're saving $5,887. Which if you look at that, you say, well, I'm not saving that much money, but it's still very competitive compared to the alternative. If you're a state or local government, if you're operating in an area where they're saying you got to go to a low carbon fuel, look at the comparison in cost, not between natural gas and diesel, but the cost between natural gas and battery electric, and the difference is very favorable to natural gas. That's how I would look at this. Alex, anything else, or Dan, anything else I need to cover in this scenario?
No, I think you've done a heck of a job. Thank you for that.
Well, let me just weigh in here real quickly, Alex, if you don't mind. So I think there's just a couple things. One, this online calculator, Alex had to necessarily kind of limit its flexibility. So if you're thinking, if you're wondering why, the value, we put in a value of a diesel vehicle. So in this case, it's a diesel refuse hauler. And it calculates a 15% increment for a natural gas equipped refuse hauler. And I think it's 50% increment for a battery electric. That's an automatic calculation regardless of which vehicle, what kind of vehicle you're putting in. So, what I'm trying to say there is it will always be whatever number you put in for whatever vehicle you're trying to calculate. A gas version will be 15% more and an electric version will be 50% more. But in the spreadsheet version that Alex referenced, he has the capability to modify those numbers as well. So this online calculator is a little bit rigid, a little bit limited, but it's just designed to be accessible to as many people as possible, and to give fleets an opportunity to just kind of put a finger in the air and say, is this something I even want to look at more? And so I just wanted to note that for folks, that those calculations are baked in on the online calculator, but they are flexible, and Alex can manipulate them with the spreadsheet.
To piggyback on what Dan said, and as I mentioned earlier, when you're talking about per mile maintenance costs, you know, you enter the diesel cost per mile maintenance in the calculator, and it multiplies times 0.8 for CNG and times 1.2 for battery electric. That is rigid in the online tool. But as Dan says, in the Excel-based calculator, we can manipulate all of those things and many others as well. So if anyone has questions, we had some questions earlier on. Dan and Jeff and I would be happy to entertain those.
Yeah, we have questions for Alex or Jeff. Jeff, one question is in some of the work, well, here we have another question. So let's, from Michael Graham, does the calculator work for trucking fleets as well? I think it works probably really well for trucking fleets, but Alex, I'll let you take that away.
Yeah, I think the point of this tool is that you can use it for any type of fleet. You can use it for cement mixers. You can use it for delivery vehicles. You could use it for log trucks. I've never seen a log truck scenario, but it would make sense. I mean, they do return to base every day. So you could use it for drayage trucks. So I think you can use this tool pretty well. It's pretty applicable. I mean, we've tried it so far with transit fleets, refuse fleets, and delivery fleets, and it's performed well for all of those fleet applications.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is based on a conversation we just had, the places that are rigid are, so it's the incremental cost of the alternative fuel vehicle. The diesel's pretty easy to find, but we've baked those numbers in, and then the kind of the incremental cost of maintenance bays, again, those are baked in a little bit, and so in the online calculator, but there is flexibility in the spreadsheet calculator.
Yeah. So to piggyback on that, in the online tool, what we're using a number that I got from Rogue Valley Transportation District. They built a CNG fueling station and maintenance bays that serve 30 buses, and they did this in 2018, and they paid 1.25 million for that facility. 1.25 million divided by 30 is a little over 40,000. That's where that number comes from. So, if you had a really big fleet, you could see per vehicle fueling and maintenance infrastructure costs go as low as $25,000 per vehicle. If you had a really small fleet, it's possible that per vehicle infrastructure cost could exceed 50,000. While that is rigid in the online tool, that is very much manipulable in the Excel calculator.
Other questions? Jeff, quick question. You've seen lots of calculators. You alluded to this earlier on. What would you characterize as the most useful distinctions from this calculator? It's not to say it's perfect or the best. It's just another calculator out there. But what do you perceive are the most useful distinctions that this calculator offers?
Well, I think the ability to model the RINs and the clean fuel credits is really important. And I think I don't know if Alex said it before, but he said it yesterday to me when we were planning for this, that you plan to update those values on a fairly regular basis so that you're getting a pretty good, accurate representation of what those credits are worth. I think that's great. I think the fact that it's so user-friendly and, very quickly you can do that rough analysis. A fleet's going to know what their maintenance costs are, right? So while we're saying, it may be this or maybe that, I think if it's a fleet user who's going in here, they know what they should know what their cost per mile of operations are. Somebody in their shop should know that, so they can put that in, know what their costs are, probably fairly accurately. So you can do it really quickly. That's what's great. And then the idea of having someone else come along and then say, okay, let's look at what we can really do for you based on your situation. Let's plug some more specific things in from the natural gas side in terms of what a fuel provider can do for you. So I think it's a great, I think that's all that makes it a really good tool.
Well, and then with your help, Jeff, I was able to incorporate the alternative fuel tax credit value in as well. And, and you can decide, again, do you want to rely upon that program being there into the future, or don't you? And, it's flexible in that way as well.
So I do have a question from Dave Swenson. Hi, Dave. Good to read your voice, I guess. Can the model be adjusted to calculate fleets using liquefied natural gas?
Boy, the answer is I don't know. I don't know what, it's important to know what you know and know what you don't know. And I think I don't know enough to know whether I can answer that question. Because I'm imagining that the fueling and maintenance infrastructure costs might be very different for LNG than they are for CNG, RNG. And I'm also imagining that there are other factors that I have not even considered. So I wouldn't use it for LNG if it were me.
I think there are, just to layer onto that a little bit, Dave, I think we might, Alex might be able to, with the spreadsheet tool, do some things that would work with LNG, but it would require revising or creating a lot of different inputs than we're using here. So the spreadsheet has how many inputs, Alex?
Oh, there are about 45.
45 inputs, and so we picked like 12 here or 15 because we had to limit it for the online. So it's possible, but I think Alex is correct. When you start thinking about GHG reductions, we need to think about where that input is.
Yeah.
Because most of that's calculated using the carbon index scores from the GREET model and from the Oregon Clean Fuels Program. So it'd be pretty tough to do with our LNG. Then Michael Graham has a question. Can the tool let a fleet know if they're hauling too heavy for existing CNG engines? And maybe they need to consider the Hyliion technology if they want to go CNG.
I think that's a great point. No, the short answer, Michael, and thank you for all your questions, because I love how your mind works. You always have the insightful questions. The tool will not tell you if you're running too heavy. I think most of us on this call know that you can't go over 84,000 pounds and stay within your warranty if you're just using the 12-liter Cummins engine. And no, the tool doesn't have the ability to factor in the Hyliion, but we understand through our conversations with Chris Kreiker, who's on our board, works with Northwest Natural, the natural gas vehicle promotion. We understand that Hyliion technology is working really well for some major food processors that may or may not haul ice cream over the Coast Range. And so if it can do, and those guys run heavy, I've worked with them for years. And so if you can use the Hyliion e-axle technology to bridge that 84,000 to 105,000 pound gap and do so successfully in a cost-effective manner, that's certainly something to be considered, but that is not something that has been considered within this tool.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, Alex, do you want to close us out?
I would be happy to. I just want to thank all of you for your support and for your interest. And please feel free to share information about our tool with your colleagues and your friends, and especially with any folks from the fleet communities that you may be in contact with. And to the extent that any of you or your friends have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll welcome your phone call or your email anytime. Thanks so much.
The calculator can be accessed yourself if you want to just play with it and plug numbers in on the Northwest Alliance for Clean Transportation website. That's NW Alliance, all one string, all lowercase, .net, nwalliance.net. In a couple of weeks, it'll also be available on the Northwest Gas Association website, nwga.org. And if you do want to contact Alex directly, his email address is ashay, that's ASCHAY, at nwalliance.net. Also, at some point in the not too distant future, we will be making this calculator a branded version of this calculator, so it will always include the Northwest Alliance brand with it, but we'll be making it available for participants, our members in particular, to put on their own websites. It is developed to be able to slip right into any website as a plugin. So stay tuned for that. That's still several weeks off, but we're going to make that available to our members. So with that, I'll just say thank you, Jeff, for joining us today and for your expertise, and thank you, Alex, for all your hard work on this calculator and developing the tool that it is. And thank you to all of you who participated in this Northwest Alliance for Clean Transportation webinar. We look forward to visiting with you again soon. Thanks, everybody.